What's up, guys? If you're not a C# user or a .NET developer, this video probably isn't going to be for you. But I wanted to show you something that came up this week for me that I hadn't ever seen anybody speak to before. And so I thought, well, maybe I should share my learnings from this week. So the first thing to kind of put this in context is the .NET team has been working on adding support for file-based programs into .NET. So the idea being that you can do something like .NET run and then a particular CS file, and .NET will just run whatever codes in your CS file. Very similar to, Node execute, Node index.ts or index.js, right? So a very similar experience there where, if you wanted to write a small, simple script in C# and then run it, you can do that. And excitingly enough, the first bits of functionality for this feature are actually in the preview version of .NET 10, which you can download right now. So you can get the SDK, which is preview, it's 10.0.100 preview.4. And so you can download the SDK and you can actually experiment with this file-based program experience. And so that's what I did, where I actually went ahead and went out and downloaded the SDK. So if I say .NET -- list SDKs, you can see I've got a very old .NET 3 SDK on this machine. I've got several versions of the .NET 9 SDK, and then I actually have the preview version of .NET 10. Now, I've went ahead and set up a little, playground here where I've got an index.cs file here that I can work with, and if I cat that out so you can see what's in there, it's basically just a simple program that takes in an argument or looks for an argument. If that first argument is given, it'll use that to say hello, and then otherwise it'll just say hello world. So the idea here is if everything is set up correctly, I should be able to say .NET run index.cs, right? So very similar to kind of what your JavaScript or TypeScript developers are used to working with something like Node or Dino or Bun. But you're going to see if I do this, it's not going to work. But why is it not working, right? Because I have the latest version of the SDK installed. So if I type .NET list SDKs again, you'll see it's there, but for some reason it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because at the root or at my home directory, I have a file called global.json. And in this file, I've specified what the version of .NET or the .NET SDK I want to use. And the way the .NET CLI works is the .NET CLI, whenever you execute the command, it's basically going to look for that global.json file recursively up directories from where you execute the command. So once it finds the first encounters a global.json file, it's going to pay attention to whatever directives you've set in that configuration file. So if I was to actually modify this global.json, and let's say I don't specify an SDK, let NeoVim start up here for a second. Let's say I don't specify an SDK, so we'll just delete that out, and then let's open up a new tab here in PowerShell. And if I go back to that directory that I was in just a minute ago, which is called cool, because I think this is a very, very cool feature. I know I'm very good at naming things. And I rerun .NET run index.cs, now everything should work, because by default, the .NET CLI is just going to use the most recent version of the SDK that's installed on my machine. Now, the problem here is then if I go somewhere else on my machine, let's say I go to start a new project, let's say I make a new directory called new project. Again, see, I'm very good at naming things. And I cd into that new project, and I type .NET new console. And then we cat the project. Let's actually see what the structure is. So if I cat this CS proj file out, you'll see it's targeting net 10. But for my purposes, if I'm doing normal development, I don't want to be using the preview version. I want to be using .NET 9, right? So now we're in this, we're back in this case where like the SDK, it's using the right SDK in one case and the wrong SDK in another. So the way you fix this, and this was kind of my learnings, was you can have multiple of these global.json files, and because the .NET CLI goes recursively up and stops at the first global.json it finds, you can make this work in both cases. So let's go ahead and back up. We'll remove that new project, and we'll say yes. We want to move everything. We'll go back over here. We'll go ahead and put back our .NET 9 version. So this is the global.json file in my home directory. So we'll go ahead and leave that there. Now if we go back here and we make that new project again, like that, and then we'll say cd new project. We'll say .NET new console. Okay, and then we should be able to cat the csproj file, which is going to be new project. Now we can see now we're back to using .NET 9, which is what we want. Now, if we go back to that cool directory, cd to cool, you're going to see we're back to the same issue where if I run this again, it's going to fail because we're using. But the way we can fix this, based on the information I learned and what I just shared with you, is we can just create a new file here, and we will actually open this up in NeoVim. We can actually create a new file here that's called global.json, and we will just take what we got in global.json in our root directory. Let's set that to our clipboard. This. And if we go back over here and paste it, now what we can do is we can specify the actual version we want to use when we're running in the cool directory. So in this case, I'm going to need to say .NET --list SDKs, and I'll just go ahead and copy that. You have to actually specify the specific version, and we'll write that out. And now we'll go ahead and quit. And now if I do .NET run index.cs, everything works the way we'd expect to. And then I can say .NET run index.cs Steven. Or how about YouTube? Which I think is pretty awesome. So I had never experimented much with having multiple SDKs of different versions installed on my machine and trying to use different versions of those SDKs. But this is a really helpful way that you can set things up so that you can have sort of a default, right? Set a global.json in your root directory. That's sort of your default, what you want to use most of the time. And then whenever you need to escape that default, you can just create a global.json in whatever directory you're working with to say, okay, in this case, I want to use an older version of the SDK, or maybe in this case, in the case like what I'm doing here, where I'm exploring this new file-based program feature, I can set a global.json that uses this preview version of the SDK. Whoops. Like that. So I hope you find that helpful. I also hope that if you're a C# developer or .NET developer, I hope you'll go check out this .NET Run file experience. There's actually a very good talk that was just published to YouTube of Damian Edwards from the .NET team actually demoing this functionality. So you should go check that out here. I'll go ahead and put this link in the description so you can go and watch it. But I think it's very exciting. I think it opens up a lot of opportunities to use C# in new and different ways, and in places where you may have not reached for C# in the past, but now going forward you can. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know. Drop a comment or find me on Bluesky. You can find me at stevenfreeborn.com. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next stream or the next video or the next short. Hope you guys are having a good day. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.